So my name is Sheilah Crowley. I am the founder and the CEO of my own company called The Summit. And I use the word CEO very deliberately because I believe that we are all each our own CEO and we need to operate at that level all the time for ourselves, on behalf of ourselves. I know Anju and Barbara because I went to them and said, you know, of your membership, how many people kind of take advantage of what you have to offer, right? And they said, about half. You know, everyone's a part of the membership, but who's taking advantage of? And they said about half, and I said, well, maybe there's some people in that pool who actually don't know what they want to do and feel intimidated, right, to get going. So my question is, who in the room knows what she wants to do? Don't be shy. Cool. Excellent. So maybe the others are a little bit on the fence trying to figure it out. Is that fair to say? Okay, good. So yeah, about half the room and half the room. So I believe that the foundation of any career development is around purpose, right? So you know that purpose and meaning are the new black, right? Everyone talks about it, right? My husband's in CSR, corporate social responsibility, it's everywhere. But I believe that because of our timing, right, we're re-entering and we're giving up again sort of our family, in part, our family life, in part, our social life, in part, our hobbies, all those things. I believe that it's really important to nail that meaning and purpose thing for a lot of reasons. One, you know, longevity in your company or whatever you try to do. But two, making it worth it for you, making it valuable for you, right? This is an opportunity to be kind of forward-facing, saying, this is who I am, this is what I bring, the value I bring, and this is what I'm excited about. And I have that foundation now. It's not just I was an accountant, so I'm going to go back and be an accountant because I know how to be an accountant, that kind of thing. I'm past that. And I, just by way of history, I worked at City Harvest in nonprofit management for about 11 years. I was there for 7. I took off 5 to be with children, and I went back for 4. So I've had the experience of what you're up to. I've also had the experience of a different startup, which was rather successful, but I then wanted to go back into nonprofit work. That's another story. But in 2013, I got derailed. I went like into a ravine with a health issue, and I'm fine now. But not unlike the jolt and Barbara's baby, you know, all these things, you realize that life brings you these opportunities, let's just say. So with that, I was afforded a summit, which is part of the name of my company, which was me and a sort of a council of inner tribe for me to help me get out of that ravine and figure out my purpose. Like, what am I going to do now? Because I could not do anything close to what I was doing at City Harvest. So does that make sense? I have 2 children. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I have 2 children. One just started college. The second is a junior in high school. I love them deeply. I see my daughter at 3 o'clock. You know, I've created a life for myself that I'm so deeply happy about. So I speak from a place of knowledge. So we've been at this work for 4 years. And these are the things that we know that work. And they're obvious, but I want to name them because it's really important that we just be very clear about what works out there. So first, you've invested your time. You're here, which is a great, great step. And I'm sure you've done other things in this vein. But I believe that you need to take a deep dive for yourself, take a very serious deep dive in terms of time, not just at your computer on LinkedIn, like twirling around and feeling insecure, but more figuring out what is your value statement, right? What are you bringing? And how to create a narrative around it. How do you talk to people about who you are, right? Because you want to attract, right, your purpose and your meaning. You don't want to just be out there kind of feeling, you know, so time, really, really important. Assets, obviously it was talked about. Rupa, she's amazing. I'm so impressed, I can't wait to talk to her. We have to do the work of looking at our assets, and it's not just doing sort of quick polls online, right, and getting a little report. Like, how many people have done that? How many people have done self-help books and still don't have a plan, right? So we do a lot of little things, but I think we need to do one concentrated thing in a very particular way. So the second is obviously the marketplace. We know some things are trending, right? We know geoglobal Negotiations, we know cybersecurity, we know the climate, right? We have to, as Rupa said, stay on top of what's trending. I think it's really important for us just so that we can see where we might fit in, not to feel like I don't know where to go. It's more like, what's happening? How can I fit into this current? 3, we all know, and it's been documented, I just read another HBR article about this, is that goals that are written down in a plan format are more successfully achieved than goals that are just in your head, right? So it's like, I want to get a job by July, the end of July, but in the summer. Well, that's a great goal, but you're not going to get there unless you write it down and make it more specific and more measurable and more attainable and more relevant, right? And we do a ton of this with our summit work because we know that the plan, as well as the support, is really where the rubber hits the road, right? People have a lot of good ideas. They want to do what right? They're excited to get a job, but they actually don't have a plan and they don't have the support in place, right? We do a lot of work with groups of 4 or 5 women, and you create 5 goals, and we meet once a month. And I coach you between that, and you get it done. You move down the road, and I've been told that one of my greatest assets is getting women down the road. It's a very simple thing, but it doesn't happen, particularly if you're working in a vacuum, right? Okay, so on to you. So I wanted to talk about this idea of purpose. I think I mentioned purpose, as I can let you know, is directly tied to happiness. I'm really interested in happiness, right? As a construct, I want to be a happy employer and a happy employee. So the way that we can actually figure out our purpose, if we don't know necessarily, is to do this asset mining, which I mentioned on the first page. We look at your talents, your skills, your interests, your work and your lifestyle, and not just what you want. Like, you could have 56 talents, right? But what we ask is, like, in the next year, I want you to name 5 of these that you want to be firing on. I want you to name 5 of your natural talents. And no one thinks they have them, by the way. I have tons of lists, and everyone ends up with plenty of them. But, because we get confused. There's too many things that we're firing on, right? We have no clarity. So we need clarity, particularly for launching. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to have clarity for this period of time to get you off the starting gate. I'm going to do 2 more exercises, and then we're going to quickly wrap up. So back to this idea, I'm trying to just kind of get, unearth some of this, like, who am I, what's my purpose, what's meaning to me, what makes me excited? Because that's the language you want to use when you're out there, no matter where you are, right? So I'd like to give, prompts like, okay, so where was the last time where you were doing something and you lost all sense of time and place? Like, you looked up and it's like, oh my God, it's 4 o'clock, I thought it was only 2 o'clock, or, right? What were you doing? Where were you? Who was there? Why did it matter? Right? In my case, my daughter, I love being home I work from home, and I love being home when my daughter comes home at 3:47, and I know exactly the time because I'm just like, and then we have this hour, and sadly, I'm sort of thinking about work. I'm totally excited about her, but I am so excited to get back to work because I know my husband's going to be coming home at 7, and I have to cook, like all that. So I lose myself in my work, right? Some people lose themselves on the soccer field with their children. Some people lose themselves, helping make costumes at school. Some people lose themselves, being on a board of a nonprofit, right? They feel their energy. They feel themselves in some other place. The second I really love is, like, related. Like, you have no phone, you have no children, you have no husband, you have nothing. You have no responsibility. You're free as a bird. Free as a bird. And you walk out your door. I'm forcing you to open the door. You walk out, and where do you go? Like, what do you do? That's okay. You don't need to know, but this is the kind of thing that we want to get at, right? But that's because nobody has said, that's why my number 1 tenet is time, because you have not been afforded 12 seconds to think about this, right? And if you're afforded the time, I guarantee you will come up with something. You're going to come up with many things. It's really interesting how that unfolds. 3 minutes. Oh, okay, very quickly. Lastly, I am a big fan of a writer in the sort of coaching guru world, and his name is Gay Hendricks. I wrote it here. Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap. The book is about limiting beliefs, right, which came up with Rupa. It comes up with women all the time. Limiting beliefs. right? Like I can't write, I've never been a writer, there's no way I can get up on, or I can't public speak, I've never been able to do this, I'm never gonna get there, right? Those are very simple examples, but so he talks about how we operate in 3 different levels, mostly. We operate on a level of competence, a level of excellence, and then a level of genius. And the goal here is to be here 80% of your time. And I'm going to give you this very quick example. And I'm making this up, right? So when I'm at my level of competence, I'm a school teacher. I'm a generalist. I'm a school teacher. I teach English, Spanish, French, history, right? You know those general ed teachers? I've been teaching for 50 years. I'm very good at teaching. So that's when I'm at my best. And when I'm at my best, the exact thing I'm doing, I use the example of I got a master's in comparative literature. My very favorite is 19th century English literature. So when I'm teaching literature, forget math, forget history, forget science, I am on fire. I love teaching 19th century literature. So that's when I'm in my excellence zone. When I'm at my genius zone, I belong to a church, and at the church, parents can volunteer. And when I'm volunteering, I like to teach 19th century literature to students who are in ELS, right? So English is a second language. I love language too, and I love the challenge of reaching these kids with the passion I have behind the work that I love so much. So leaving here, I want you to think about this as you're traveling the world, right? I want you to think about those places where you've lost your sense of time and place and what was going on in a good way, right? I want you to think about, like, I'm here, I'm doing what I really like to do, but what is it that I really like to do when I'm doing this? Excellence. And lastly, so next steps. And I'll put this back down if anyone wants to take a picture of people like that. So next steps, I want you to go home tonight. I hope you're going to share with your family, your children in particular, what you've learned today, any insight that you had. I want you to tell them that moment that you were proud, if you want. You know what I mean, if it makes sense. Just tell them something. Give them a nugget of what's going on here. You're really trying to start to talk about yourself, which we don't also do. We tend to ask about everybody else, ask how their day was. When was the last time someone sat down and said, I'd like to mine everything about you, your skills, your talents, right? I'd like to tell you the impression that you make on me in the world, right? Doesn't happen. It happens with the summit, though. Telling you, I can't help but plug that. Okay, so along those lines, if you want to take this to the next level, I am partnered with Vermilion. So together, they're helping to they're giving discounts to members and non-members of Vermilion family for retreats that are coming up through September. And those retreats include 4 women who you don't necessarily know. They could include 3 of your friends if you want to do that. We've done that many times. So we use community and voices and a lot of discussion to make sure we get at who you are, your essences, and then what 2 directions you may want to go down. I think we spoke earlier, and I can't remember. You tell me your name? Melissa. And she has 2 or 3 directions that she's excited about going down. That's what we end up with our retreats as well.
So I would like to introduce Luisa to you. Luisa Baldini, she's one of our coaches. She specializes in elevator pitches, helping you with putting the perfect elevator pitch together. We realize that you're all in different phases of career re-entry, so if you're just exploring first, then elevator pitch is a little bit further in the process. But still good to know, like, how does a good elevator pitch, how does it look like, and then we have some time to practice as well. So Luisa, she moved to the UK. She used to live in the US. That's how we met her, but she is still with us with Zenfi as well.
Yes, thanks, Amber. Yes, I miss you all in New York. I'm stuck here in the rain in the UK, so I'm very pleased to be focusing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the elevator pitch. It's quite an art, so I hope to give you some tips and pointers to be able to craft a really good elevator pitch. It's such a fantastic resource, a very flexible resource that you can use at the drop of a hat. So if you've prepared something and you've got it up your sleeve, You could use it whether you're doing the school pick-up and drop-off, meeting other parents, or at a networking evening, or in an interview as well. So firstly, why would you use an elevator pitch? As a career returnee, if you're looking for your next position, if you're already working and you want to do some PR marketing for your company, if you're a freelancer and you're looking for business, if you're selling a product which maybe you've even invented, if you're advertising a service, or even, as I used to have to do as a journalist at the BBC, pitching a story to my editor. So you can use it in all different scenarios. The most important thing I would say is to keep it short. I would prepare just 30 seconds. Now, it does seem short, but the whole point is you are just trying to interest and engage the person you're talking to so that they hopefully follow up with some questions, and then you can fill in with more detail. But if you give too much information and you end up sort of boring them, then they're not going to even listen to you all the way through, and they're not going to follow up necessarily wanting to know more. Prepare 30 seconds. When you're actually delivering the elevator pitch in a conversational way, it will take longer. It will also help really crystallize in your mind the most important things to say about yourself if you're only preparing 30 seconds, and that way you're not going to be including extraneous information which isn't really needed. The formula that I teach is hook, line and sinker, to use fishing analogy. It's the most versatile formula which will work for whatever situation you're in, whichever phase you are in your career, and for your audience. All it needs, if you craft your pitch using this formula, all you need to do is tweak it at the moment, depending on who you're talking to, or if you've maybe moved on in your career. So start with a hook. That is the most important thing, is to hook someone in. You need to start off with something really interesting and engaging that is going to make them want to listen to you. They may be talking to 10, 15 other people at a networking evening. If you're going to be memorable and interesting, then you need to open up with a bang and hook them in straight away. Then the middle section of your elevator pitch is your line. Now this is your, for example, it could be your career story, or if you don't have the strongest career story, your personal story, or either way, it's the sort of story, the backstory to how you got to be where you are today and trying to move forward in the way you are. The last part of the elevator pitch is the sinker. This is the weight that is going to pull the hook down to where all the fish are so that you can get that bite. For career returnees, I would say that your sinker should be a call to action. So you might say to someone, I'm trying to get to my next career stage. I'm really interested in your experience. If you have 10 more minutes to talk to me about it, I'd love to meet you for coffee. Or it could be, I'd really appreciate it if you could think of someone to introduce me to help me discuss this next phase of my career. Or do you know anyone you can point me in the right direction of so that I can get more information? Once you get all those three elements, that is when you make your connection or your catch. I say connection because that is what we're trying to achieve with the elevator pitch. You are really trying to connect on a human level with the person you're talking to. You need to be memorable once you have left that room. Hopefully, if your elevator pitch is successful and you're not just giving the resume, you will connect with that person and they will want to help you. What do you include? It could be all manner of things. These are just a few examples. Your value proposition, your unique selling point, your accomplishments. If they're about what role you want, then obviously that should be in there. Why you're so passionate about this line of work or the area that you're looking for work in, how that person can help you, and what you do or what your organization does. If you came up with a business idea, how you had that brainwave. People love stories. They're not going to remember facts and figures. They're going to remember stories. So don't be afraid of putting your personal stories in there. Not personal, but your career story or your story of how you got to this point. Be careful about who you're talking to, because you will need to tweak your elevator pitch. If you're talking to someone within the same industry, then obviously be a little bit more technical. But otherwise, I would say avoid jargon, avoid technical titles and things like that. I have had work, I've gotten work from moms at school after basically very casual giving them my elevator pitch when they've asked me, what do you do? Most recently, here in the UK, a mom at school, I had no idea she was the chief marketing officer at Costa Coffee, which is the biggest coffee chain here in the UK. I think it's overtaken Starbucks now. And she said, what do you do? So I gave them my very, casual, not too intense elevator pitch. And she said, that's really interesting. I'd love you to come in and talk to my team. So I was in there on Monday talking to them, and then she asked me to pitch for some business. So you never know who you're talking to and what could come out of it. So it's really important to have your elevator pitch really crafted well, succinct, pithy, and engaging. When do you give it? Obviously, if someone says, what do you do? Or tell me about yourself. Recently, I was training the British Council in Washington, D.C. They told me that a lot of people didn't understand what the British Council does. So they were being asked a lot about the British Council, and they had to find basically an elevator pitch to try and explain that in a succinct, engaging way. Someone might say, what are you working on right now? What have you been up to? That's what I ask people a lot. What have you been up to? And when I ask that, say, of other moms, I don't necessarily want to know where they've been on vacation. That is when I'm really looking for something interesting, like an interesting project they've been working on or a new business idea. So little phrases like that are great opportunities to come out with your elevator pitch. And obviously, what sort of role are you looking for? The most important thing, practice, practice, practice. I have to practice every time I'm going to a networking event or going to an important meeting, because it's always changing and evolving, your elevator pitch, and it changes even on the same night, I find, from person to person I'm talking to. The most important thing is to get comfortable with hearing it from your own lips. So practice it in the car, for example, on your way to a networking event. At the end, up to your call to action, be sure to follow up with your business card. I now use Clink, which is an app which is for an e-card, so I don't have a physical business card anymore, because I have a pile of other people's business cards on my desk, which I've been meaning to go through. I still haven't had time. If you use Clink, your virtual business card lands in the person's inbox and they can save your contact details. So I'd really recommend that, or follow up with LinkedIn, or follow up by asking for a coffee. Don't lose that opportunity. There's no point doing your elevator pitch if you're hopefully not going to get, if you're not going to get something out of it. So, who is our first volunteer?
Group A we are in, so who volunteered? Did somebody say yes to the question, do you want to volunteer? I think we have some on the list, right?
Christine Robert.
Oh, that's me. Did I volunteer? Oh my god.
Come on, Christine.
Okay.
Come on out.
Yes.
Right there? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Christine Robertson, I'm a property manager, and I work at a firm that is privately owned, and we own and manage 17 shopping centers in the Northeast Corridor. That involves working with the tenants, involves working with contractors, paving, plumbing, and as well as the legal side of running shopping centers. Period.
Okay.
Finished.
What?
Is that
Okay. Christine, what stage are you at? Are you in a position?
Actually, I was just downsized not a month ago. I was doing an amazing, fabulous job, and I negotiate incredibly well with landscaping contracts and snowplow contracts, but the owner just didn't feel he needed me anymore, even though I was so
Okay.
so I've been working.
Now I did say keep your elevator pitch short, pithy, and succinct to prompt some more questions. But I feel with yours it's a little bit too bare. Although you need to keep your elevator pitch succinct, you need to get all the information, the vital information in there. I feel like I didn't understand what situation you were in at the moment.
Well, I'm actually, it is curious to say, do you say that, even though it's doing such a fabulous job, I've been downsized from this position, this is what, being a property management role is what I want to move into?
Time to move on.
It's time to move on. So how do you represent yourself that you're literally, I'm a property manager? No longer.
You don't, I mean, it's not something you have to hide, but I don't think it's something you need to highlight. What you want to focus on is what the direction you're moving in and all the experience you're bringing with you. And then I would almost leave it for someone to say, oh, well, how come you're looking for a new position? And then you just very open and you say, whatever. This is the situation.
I'm way too wordy. I've been told by others that I'm way too wordy, so I'm trying to be more focused. But I guess I'm zeroing into...
I would love to... What I really encourage people to do with the elevator pitch is to think outside the box. Mm-hmm. You are trying to stand out from a whole cohort of other people also looking for positions. So what I would really encourage you to do, all of you, is to imagine there is another person with exactly your qualifications, exactly your background, career background, and you're all going for the same position. And that person doing the interviews is hearing all the same story or the same pitch. How are you going to stand out? What can you add on top of your career history and your accomplishments to stand out from the crowd? What can you add at the opening as your hook to make that interviewer think, oh, this one's going to be interesting? Imagine they've done 5 interviews and they're like, oh God, here's another one. Here we go. Heard it all before. That is what you have to envisage in your mind when you're going to pitch. Whether it's for an interview or a networking event, you have to make yourself memorable and engaging. So I'd really encourage you all to think outside the box, almost forget about your resume and just talk from in here. What is it that makes me passionate? It's that thing that is going to be engaging and interesting to whoever you're talking to.
Well, actually, what's interesting when you mention resume is that I've actually made my resume skill-based, because that is more whom I represent, not where I've worked, but the skills that I have, I can bring to pretty much any forum. And that is actually, in interviews, which I just had, was a book, because they were like, she was like, oh, this is interesting, and why are you doing your resume this way? And so what skills do you have, and why have you done it this way?
So why not making the elevator pitch also skill-based?
Have you worked on...
That's good, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Have you worked at any really well-known shopping centres? Have you run any really well-known ones? Like Palisade?
I worked with Montefiore, New Rochelle. Montefiore is a hospital, huge hospital industry here. They own quite a few different hospitals.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I got fixated on shopping centres for some reason. Britain and
well, that was part of property manager. There was also a laboratory coordinator within Montefiore. And I was also in emergency preparedness.
I would put in Montefiore somewhere in there because it's such a well-known brand in that area that may be one of those things that will be memorable about you.
Okay.
So I would definitely add something like that in. Remember your call to action at the end. So depending on your, well, not for interviews as much, but if you're networking or meeting people, you know, do you know any, you know, do you know of any I could meet in to discuss this further, or so don't forget your call to action at the end. And I'd really like you to think of something a bit more engaging as your opening line. So think about where your passion lies, and it's got to be authentic. You don't want to say something that sounds and feels corny and fake to you. So it will take a bit of time to get used to thinking outside the box and finding that really interesting opening line that's going to make someone's ears prick up and think, oh, this one's different. This is where she's really interesting. I want to listen to what she has to say. Because at the end of the day, that is what you're trying. You all have the experience and the intelligence, so you're all going to have good content. It's how you deliver that content in a way that is going to be engaging to other people. So I would experiment with different opening lines, and for that, rip up the resume and think from the heart, what makes you interesting? What makes is there something in this area of property management that you're passionate about? Because if you're passionate about it, that is going to be, you know, someone else is going to feel that passion, or, you know, and that will be really interesting to them. So just, I would just work opening line.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christy.
We have a question from Melissa.
Yeah. It's funny that you honed in on the hook issue, because I was going to ask if you have any, you know, I feel like it would be helpful to hear some examples of what, you know, a good hook would be.
Well, gosh, it very depends on what your situation is. You know, for me, when I left the BBC and moved to New York with my husband's job, and I was really trying to work out what I was going to do, the BBC, and having been a network news correspondent, was my hook. You know, it's a global brand, it's really well known. I found throughout my career that people were always really interested in hearing that I was a TV correspondent and the stories I'd worked on. So I used that as my hook. I was a BBC correspondent for 12 years, now I'm ... So that worked for me. Now I don't use that anymore because I have moved on from that. So, you know, I can't always use the BBC, but it will always be a part of who I am and part of my elevator pitch. So for someone, you know, it could be, you know, when you're doing that, you know, when you're internet shopping and you go to pay and there's a little padlock sign up on at the top of the screen to show it's a safe transaction. Yes. Someone might say, I invented that. That could be their hook. If that's what you had invented, if you come up with that software, you know, you wouldn't go, I'm a software engineer working for blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
So I think using examples of what you did in your job. So for example, I think Rupa also, I know Luisa, you wasn't there, but when Rupa did her presentation, yes.
Just say hello.
But so expensive, you can be an accountant, but what type of project did you do, right? What is it that's something that is like just an accountant is right, yeah, right. What stands out for you, right?
Another example is if you set up a business or came up with an idea because you were trying to solve a problem, then your hook could be, you know how hard it is to find good childcare in this area. Well, I started a childcare business because I wanted to solve the problem. That could be your hook. So it really depends. But what you will have noticed with all these three or four examples, is that they are engaging and different, and then none of them are starting with I am filling the position title. Do you see what I mean? It's really bringing what you do to life in a more engaged way that someone is going to want to hear the rest of your pitch, and you're going to perform that to them.
So Louisa, I hate to do this, but we need to stop. We need to move on to the next sessions. I just want to let everybody know that Louisa is still our Vermilion coach, although she lives in the UK, but she can coach like this perfectly. So if you are in the need to practice your elevator pitch, Louisa can help. You can contact us, and then we can bring you in touch. I mean, we say that to everybody, but I think everybody who is in the phase of interviewing needs an elevator pitch practice, because that's how you hook in and get that job. If you're still in the phase of clarifying, then an elevator pitch is a little bit further out, but still, so just so you know that Louisa is there, we can help you with getting in touch with Louisa.
Great. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Louisa.